If NFL computers were programmed to construct the ideal quarterback, they would print out Kenny Anderson.
I definitely believe Ken Anderson belongs in the Hall of Fame. He was an NFL MVP, a four-time Pro Bowler, four-time NFL passing champion.
What a throw from Anderson.
And he played with consistency for 16 years.
48.
Absolutely should be in the Hall of Fame, 100%. You could put his statistics up against 75% of the quarterbacks that are in the Hall of Fame, and he will have them beat in every particular category.
Anderson is going to get in.
If you look at his 1974 and 1975 seasons,
Looks fires into the end zone. Touchdown.
they're some of the best seasons of all time. He was completing 62% of his passes at a time when the NFL average was 52%.
If I had a son who was right-handed and I wanted him to watch somebody throw the football, watch him just perform, watch his footwork and watch his arm, Kenny Anderson would be as good as any.
Heck, I just want Kenny Anderson's name to appear on the final 25 or 15. Ken Anderson can't get in that room. There's like a barricade on that door.
Ken Anderson usually came up with a lot of competition. I was a Ken Anderson man. But if there were other people that were better, and sometimes there were, then it was tough, and Ken didn't make it.
But it was our number 10 player, not Joe Montana, who proved the West Coast offense could work in the NFL.
He was the first quarterback that really ran the West Coast offense that Bill Walsh took from Cincinnati and instilled out in San Francisco with his modifications. Ken Anderson was a pioneer.
Anderson back to throw. Looks, fires into the end zone. Touchdown.
I don't know if that means he's a Hall of Famer, but I think it means he shouldn't be forgotten.
Kenny right now is probably the epitome of the NFL quarterbacks. To run the kind of offense that we're running right now, you have to be able to read defenses almost flawlessly.
The temperature in greater Cincinnati has dropped to 9 below. We're talking a wind-chilled 59 degrees below zero.
He played another great quarterback who's in the Hall of Fame and who also deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, and that's Dan Fouts, in the biggest game of Dan Fouts' career.
The Freezer Bowl in Cincinnati for the AFC title in 1981.
And who won the game?
Dan Fouts got in the Hall of Fame, and Ken Anderson beat him.
The Bengals put this AFC title away.
I think that's a silly argument. Frank Ryan beat Johnny Unitas in the 1964 NFL championship game. Is somebody going to tell me that Frank Ryan should be in the Hall of Fame and Johnny Unitas shouldn't?
Who do you have ahead of him? Kenny was the guy who didn't make mistakes. That guy was very, very accurate and efficient. He was marvelous. He was wonderful. He was one of us. He was not separated from us like a lot of quarterbacks. That guy was a baller.
Anderson was hot like WKRP's Johnny Fever on a Monday night in '75, throwing for a career-high 447 yards. But this four-time Pro Bowler was known more for accuracy than distance.
When we did the research study on the best quarterback seasons of all time, Ken Anderson had 2 of the top 10 seasons, 1974 and 1975. In '74, he led the league in both completion rate and yards per attempt.
He had a plus 10 win-loss record for the Bengals. I mean, when you win 91 games for the Bengals, you belong on some list. Plus, great mustache, very 70s.
He was running a Bill Walsh offense before anyone knew who Bill Walsh was.
He was, in a lot of ways, I think, a prototype for what Bill Walsh wanted at the position.
Bill and I spent a lot of time working together. Anytime you take a kid out of Augustana College, it's going to take a while for him to come into the National Football League. And we spent a lot of times on basics and looking at film.
He was one of these guys that if you could ever get a bead on him, you could get to him. But it was the 1-2 drop, boom, and he just dinked us all the time. We could never get to this guy.
Kenny wasn't one of those quarterbacks that you just wanted to go kill. He was a good guy that they respected.
Though Anderson was righteous, his Bengals were 0-2 in the playoffs during the 70s.
We weren't good enough around him. I'm willing to admit that.
You had to go through Pittsburgh, and there was no way you were getting through Pittsburgh at the time.
But still, some think his spot at number 8 on our countdown is totally bogus.
Ken Anderson at number 8 for the all-time quarterbacks of the 70s is just an absolute travesty.
Ken Anderson needs to be higher on this list.
You know, he's not a Hall of Famer, but I think he was one of the real good quarterbacks in the 70s.
That's too low for Ken Anderson. I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. There's a big push for it. He should get in there.
I think the fact that he never had great postseason success will always hurt him.
Here's Anderson backpedaling. Throws a pass over the middle. Anderson intercepted by Ryan.
Ken Anderson, had he won the Super Bowl after the 1981 season against the 49ers.
I don't believe he's in there.
definitely be in the Hall of Fame.
The 49ers have won it, beating the Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl.
Wasn't his fault. They lost 26-21 close game. Heck of a player. But when I think of Hall of Famer, I don't want to have to think about whether he's a Hall of Famer. I want to know, you know what? Roger Staubach is a Hall of Famer. John Elway, Hall of Famer. With Anderson, you got to think about it.
If you're a quarterback looking to get in the Hall of Fame and you never won a Super Bowl, your argument is very thin, very weak. Ken Anderson didn't do that. I cannot take any argument that he should be in seriously because of that.